Gemma, why is performing at a high intensity harder for some people than it is others?
That is the question that we're exploring today. And it was so interesting just to talk through this morning and look at we spoke about some of the elite athletes that we've worked with, and even some of the people that recently have come to our events, and the difference in someone's perception of what hard is and how that can dramatically change their ability to just transform and just to keep going and to keep pushing when things are might be incredibly tough for somebody else. That is
Interesting that you went there first
why. Why?
because that's obviously the first thing that you thought about. You were thinking about people's personality traits.
Yeah.
I just mean, I would bias that too, that kind of attitude of, there's a traditional thinking about it too, where you'll push through.
It takes you
Some
some length of the way. It takes you. I think that's what is the interesting part of it, is like having that trait is helpful until sometimes you need something else. But if you can understand the layers of consistent performance, then that can be the biggest opportunity to really take yourself so much further than maybe what you believe to be possible at that current time. If you've just got that mental resilience, like that's one trait that's certainly going to be helpful. But then you could look at the other side. Then it's somebody who maybe is feeling correctly, they're doing all the right thing, but then their mental resilience needs work, or the mental skills is the area that they need to maintain that level of high performance. And that's what we kind of looked at today. What would be the framework for somebody to actually be able to consistently perform and keep up with the pace, or maintain the pace when maybe others can't with the same physiological profile?
mm. There was something interesting came out of the paper that we read this morning. The two pillars of endurance: the metabolic pillar, carbohydrate, which is obviously your energy availability, your glycogen preservation, which is glycogen is the stored form of carbohydrate, and then the substrate, so the fuel supply. And there's two fuels. Endurance athletes will know this inside out. You've got the provision of fatty acids for oxidation for energy, and then you've got the availability of glucose, or obviously glycogen being released into your system. So energy from carbohydrate, energy from fat. But then there's the other pillar, which is the cognitive pillar. And within there, you've got your mental fatigue, executive function, and perceived exertion. So, perceived exertion is something obviously we've talked a lot about this morning, but not something we've talked enough about maybe in our overall practice. And I'll just read this section out and we'll go back to the perceived exertion point. Performance depends on stabilizing both biological fuel and the cognitive processing of that supply. Sports nutrition and sports psychology are not separate disciplines, they're intertwined, inputs feeding the exact same neurobiological pathways. So it's if put really simply, it's not just about the ability to provide your body with fuel for exercise. It's also to have the availability of energy to manage your feeling of that work that you're doing. So back to the question, if we think about why people feel or experience the same level of work or intensity differently.
That the management of the pressure, the management of what happens when they've done all these things and practices and maybe it's been okay, but then they put themselves in a different position, like in a match, and all of a sudden their ability to perform changes, and they maybe haven't practiced some of the the skills that's needed to manage the changes and manage the pressure that they're under, so that they can still consistently perform and provide space for themselves to perform too. Because sometimes that battery's just drained from all the mental energy that's been used to handle the pace of the game or to handle the pace of the changes and whatever pressure that they're facing in sport.
I was thinking about coming down the field with the ball in my hands last week. We were playing in the heat against Donegal, and I I got the ball on the left hand side of the field, and I put in a hard run. Went by one player, was feeling really good, and then there's another player coming on to me, and because of the lack of options, and also because of the level of fatigue that I was feeling, I took an extra play and I hopped the ball twice and I lost the ball and up the field it went. And I'm not trying to just narrow it down to an example as simple as that, but you've got a high level of fatigue and then you've got a lack of clarity on what the next decision is, which leads to an error. So if you think about a situation where you don't have that fatigue or there's a very clear option, you beat this player, that's the next step, or your game plan or your decision making is, well, we move the ball right or we move the ball left. Well, now there's no, there's not that you're not put into this huge level of pressure where you're trying to figure out what the next decision is under fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I would love to get out to the world through our conversations that having a game plan for your performance, but also having a game plan for your nutrition, they have to work hand in hand. You can't go into a game. You know, we were just talking beforehand about like what are the kind of really important things that can help with this lowering of fatigue. One is your carbohydrate intake, uh, or leading into it. Two is, are you hydrated? And then three is, how well do you maintain your hydration and your fuel? But thinking about all of that, not just about being able to complete the work, but actually being able to make really good, they talk about executive function, but
Plan.
I mean, how much more we need to talk about the decision making element in having the energy available for that.
Yeah, like the how you prepare and putting that into different categories and being able to clearly see that if you have the nutrition covered, that's protecting the energy to a certain point, and then it's looking at those other how you make decisions. What is your role within? If it's a team sport, like what your actual role is, and do you know what the plan is for going into the game? Because sometimes if that's a bit too muddied, you don't feel confident going into certain plays, or you don't feel confident even coming off at the end of the match, knowing if you performed well or not.
Mm.
And like having that level of sometimes not a level of detail, but just a good understanding of what it means and the types of decisions that you have to make, the positions that you're going to be in, the amount of energy that you need from a physical point of view to allow you to do that work and still have energy left over to make those decisions, especially at the end of the game when fatigue is likely increased. But then what you do if you make a mistake is also a skill that can protect that energy too. Like, can you get over it and decide this is what I'm going to do next, as opposed to dwelling on it and draining more and more energy throughout the game.
Yeah, I was thinking today about one particular client, and we were talking about this lady beforehand, and she's had a phenomenal season so far. And we've got the marathon program coming out soon, and people are going to be preparing for the marathon. And I was thinking about all of the elements that lead to having clarity and freedom and the ability. We talk about being able to enjoy your sport, but you actually can only enjoy the experience if you've got a very clear plan.
Mm.
Everything from where the toilets are and the logistics of it to your pacing to knowing what your goals are, how you're approaching your pacing. There's so many things that you need to have thought about and have come up with some good clarity around in order to go and to enjoy yourself.
Mm.
Well, maybe you won't be waving at the crowd, but I think that that's such these breakthrough performances that this amazing woman, if she's listening, has had, it hasn't just been nutrition, and it hasn't just been the psychological skills component of what are you saying to yourself when the going gets tough? How are you going to make sure that you're approaching the event with great confidence? You need to know exactly how much carbohydrate you're consuming and how much fluid you're consuming each section of the race, if you break it into 30 minutes or an hour. Like those numbers had to be hit. And then how it feels if you've maintained higher levels of energy, based off again from the paper that we're reading this morning, you're giving yourself that feel, like that feeling of fatigue is going to be linked to, can you do it or not, or how does this feel?
I've heard recently, like when the goal is to just go out into the marathon, sometimes people say that their goal is like, I just want to get through it. And sometimes that is until it's not. And then when it comes to the day and you can't enjoy it because you didn't maybe put that bit of a game plan in place or organize a few things to get right with your nutrition and exactly that. What do you do when it gets to the later stages and it's hard? And how do you, like, how are you speaking to yourself in those moments? And then if you come away feeling like you'll forget that the goal was just to get through it, and you'll be frustrated with the things that didn't go right or didn't go to what you might say is a plan. But if the plan wasn't there, then it's hard to walk away and feel like, you know, I and you either enjoyed it or there was a bit of success out of it too. Because the success can come from just knowing what you're going to do and did you do it?
Mm. If we go back to the question again around why it feels so different, without getting too into the science on it, there's a couple of key things. There's obviously your level of fitness, your genetic profile. There's something called your lactate threshold, which is your ability to clear those hydrogen ions and lactate from your system. So that's how you've trained. Then there's substrate utilization, which is, again, going back to that combination of carbohydrate and protein, and then carbohydrate and fat. And then there's how you're approaching everything, like we talked about from a nutrition perspective. So there's a huge amount of variables that are at play in that overall experience. What do you think are the simple, if you look at somebody who could be listening to this and they think, I'm one of those people who feels like this is harder than it should be. Where do they start? What are the simple steps for them to think about?
I think looking at what you're trying to, if you're in sport, I'm thinking now from a team sport perspective, that if you're training and things are feeling, maybe others around you are flying through things and you're feeling physically hard, but on paper you might have very similar fitness levels, and so you feel like the capacity for your work you should be at the same level. Very often the difference is how someone is handling that level of work. So then that's where the really understanding the nutrition element first. Are you giving your body the energy that it needs to perform? That's one pillar that needs to be understood. And then how you connect that to, okay, I am prepared. I have the nutrition element ticked off, and nearly parking that and giving yourself the space to focus on the other elements of performance that allow you to have energy and perform. So that's the cognitive part of it, your ability to sit down and decide, like, in training today, these are my goals. Like, these three things are what I'm going to focus on when I go into this session. And when I come back, that's what I'm going to reflect on. Did I execute that? And then did I give my body the right energy to perform? Have I had my pre-training meal, a good breakfast? Have I topped up? Did I have my recovery plan in place? And then do I have the space to recover from this session? Am I going to bed on time? Have I had a wind down routine that allowed me to switch off from the training session? Or am I still wired after the session and I was up scrolling? Like, those little things, that's three big things that takes recovery, energy, and mental capacity to be able to perform and reflect on your performance. And there, yeah.
I was just, yeah, I didn't mean, yeah, I was just thinking there about, there's one. important thing just to point out for anyone who's listening. If you think that you could be deficient in iron or something like that, or you think there's something else going on, geez, by all means, make sure you speak to a doctor. But this is a good checklist. This is a good process for you to think exactly like you mentioned there, Gemma. Like if you're going through all of these things methodically and you're still feeling like you're not performing like you should, these are the kind of things that you can consider.
Well, I think the iron comes into the nutrition part too. Like that would
Yeah.
be, are you providing yourself with efficient energy and nutrients
Mm. I just mean,
pre-training?
yeah, but they
Yeah.
might be. They might think that they're, but for whatever reason, they may still be
Yeah.
deficient. I think we talked about something quite interesting this morning before we came on, and we were talking about HRV, and you were telling me a couple of stories about just how different people are underestimating the load on their system. Tell the listeners a little bit more about that.
Well, HRV is like your sympathetic and your parasympathetic nervous system, and it can give us a good indicator of your ability to um, recover from different things. So recover from training, and recover from life stress and load. So it's like your fight or flight, or your rest and digest. And some people can, depending on how they respond, sometimes naturally from behavioral, like their traits. There's some people have that higher resilience and they can respond more effectively to different situations than others. And there are also the skills that can be built to improve someone's HRV, like the stress management and their ability to recover from different things, whether it's sports or whether it is work life stress. There are things that we can put in place that can HRV can be a really good indicator if that is their ability to recover is improving, or they're doing things that are supporting their recovery better. And it's one of those interventions or ways of something that we can use to, because we might have the box ticked on, we've got really good, like our VO2 max is good, or our strength and our performance outcomes and our metrics that we're seeing in the gym are improving, but maybe sometimes that can get to a point where it doesn't improve, or our ability to recover starts slowing down, and that not has that knock-on effect on our performance. So HRV can be one of those tools that we can look at, or the data that we can look at that's often overlooked, to give us a good indicator of just how are we recovering. And some of the conversation I've had recently, more so with friends, is what is in place that would actually, other than, because I would say they're doing a lot of good things with their training and their nutrition, but this was the one area that, if why is this not improving, or why is it still staying low? And it was this. This is where the interventions like mindfulness or the mental skills, the self talk, having boundaries in place for being able to have more fun, have more play, things that actually switch off and unwind. And it's something we can see in our clients as well. Recently, it's that switch off and that ability to recover has included more things that have helped improve HRV. And as a byproduct, they're going into their matches and their training with so much more like ability to emotionally regulate. Their attention control is improved and their HRV is improved. And then the outcome of that is consistencies in performance, of their well-being, and their ability to know that they have the skills to deal with hard things.
Yeah, I think the whole space is so fascinating, and I think that one of the things that we are doing better as a team and as coaches is this holistic game plan. And a part of the first phase with what we do, and we were talking about it separately, is this idea of setting really clear performance standards and what that can do. And I've just opened up here with one of the athletes that I'm working with at the moment, and the performance standards, when you start the conversation, are so sports specific. They're about very clear aspects of the game plan, and I like it's what I find I mean, of course, we're absolutely obsessed with this space. But what I find so interesting is through the conversation how they change and how they evolve. So what went from something around the defensive structure, the attacking structure, and training standards evolves into attitude, focus, concentration, self talk, body language, how I'm going to be a great teammate, and preparation standards.
Hmm.
You're talking about something completely different now. So you think about going back to how do people perform at their best, you think this is the training standard, but this is how I am in life. Now I've got a clear, and I think about those moments. We've referenced like that perception of fatigue. Well, now you've got a very clear game plan in terms of like what is your delivery both on the field, off the field, how you're showing up. And I just think it's such an exciting thing to watch evolve. So we start with
Hmm.
the preparation and we talk about like protein needs day to day and carbohydrate targets during exercise performance, having a clear game plan to what's your attitude,
Hmm.
what's your focus, how you maintain your body language. And these are the things that like they're all relevant.
Yeah, and it's been so interesting to watch, like even for us to how we can us not to decide the steps, but to understand like what the next step should be and get them to understand like what that feels like for them, and they're taking the whole ownership of, well, this is where I want to explore next, and the readiness to step into that area of like for them to unlock that performance opportunity themselves has been really cool to see. And yeah, to watch it evolve for many of these athletes is fascinating to sit back and watch. And
When now obviously we use AI for certain things, but when I was saying I put the paper that we were reading alongside some of our philosophy, one of the things that came out was fuel the body, free the mind. So an integrated nutrition and mindset approach or game plan for better performance. So adequate energy to think clearly, to regulate better, to think consistently, and the outcome with energy, clarity, consistency, confidence. It's taken us a while to get to this point, but when you ask a question again around why do people feel exertion or feel fatigue differently, when you break it all down, it starts to become so much clearer. You've got the underlying purpose and drivers and interest in your sport and why you do what you do. And then there's the performer that you want to be that you need clarity for throughout your race or throughout your game. You need that game plan. And then you need that. You talked about the management of load and stress. And like there's a lot of components that you need to engage in on a regular basis to understand all of these things. And I even said to you beforehand, I said, it's starting to make me think, all of these conversations and looking at the research, starting to make me think, hang on a second. And it's not that it's in my head, pardon the pun, but have I paid close enough attention to energy intake around some of these big phases where I'm playing golf, training, playing games, assignments, work that we're doing? What is the underlying driver? Like, is it just that you're having an off day, or, or or is there a more not simple reason, but is there another clear driver for that fatigue and mood that you might feel that's not just, geez, last night I didn't have a good sleep or that was a tough train session, or there's a combination of things that you, unless you're talking about them and reflecting on them, they won't become obvious.
mm, no, yeah, you definitely have to be looking at your own to understand.
What's your winning moments, winning moment this week, Gemma?
I think yesterday was probably my one moment. I think there's a lot more to come this week that probably present itself. But yesterday I had a good day, even just with friends that went. Well, we went to. an event that opened my eyes to a lot of different things as it relates to the work that we do. But I also just had a good time, and had carpool karaoke on the way home, so that was.
Jeez, was you driving?
No, Mark was driving. It was in the Tesla, so we had the the actual karaoke thing up. It was good fun.
That is good crack. Mine is, thanks for asking, is
What's your turn next?
I'm sure you're very interested in my winning moment this week.
God.
We'll go on and get on with it to the zoo. I was out for a walk and this morning, and I my winning moment was just a reflection. I'm doing an assignment at the moment, and it's a psychological skills intervention for golf performance. And there's three components to it. There's the video, there's the infographic, and there's the written assignment. And you have to build a case for a very specific performance variable. Like, it is so specific. Like, why is this mistake happening? And what's the impact? Like, how the athlete begins to compensate for it. And how do you help an athlete solve the problem? And if somebody is interested actually in listening, there's a good test. See if anyone's listening to our podcast, and we know people are listening. But if they're staying right to the end to hear about winning moments, ask me about this assignment. But the work that I'm doing in it is so relevant to the athletes that we're coaching, that we're supporting, that we're having in this conversation today. It's all linked. And there's a golf coach coming today, and I'm going to talk to him about some of the work that I'm doing around that assignment, so that he can use it to help his athletes and help his various aspirational and high performing golfers that he's working with. And I had this moment of huge gratitude that I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing, and that there's such a great connection between all aspects. And then we link that to the work we're doing in Verse, and how we can have conversations like we did this morning. But it's a moment that you feel in all of this that feels just right. A winning one.
Yeah. It's rare to feel this is it, and to be at the same point of like, this is what I want to do, but also to still want more. Whereas most of the time it's just the wanting more or what's next. But it's like this at the same time feeling like we're building something, but also this is it.